When we think of Vikings, we often envision fierce warriors, grand ships, and pillaged lands. But beyond the romanticized tales and sagas, there lies a world teeming with its own trials and tribulations.
No Wi-Fi and probably no cozy beds either, huh?
Indeed, Dane. From the daunting task of appeasing vengeful gods to braving the relentless northern winters, today we're exploring the challenges that would make modern-day life with Vikings a real test of grit. Welcome to Leo's Time Capsule. When we imagine the Vikings, we often visualize them raiding foreign lands. But life back home in Scandinavia was no picnic either.
You're saying there's more to Vikings than just horned helmets and longboats?
Much more. Scandinavia's environment is known for its rugged landscapes, vast forests and icy fjords. And let's not forget the chilling winters.
I get cold just thinking about it.
And you should. The extreme cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was lethal. Winters were harsh, with long nights and short days. Ensuring enough food and warmth for those months was a massive challenge. This meant that the Vikings had to be adept at hunting, fishing and farming. Each member of the community had a role in this survival chain.
So, no lazy Sundays binge-watching shows?
Far from it. Every day was about ensuring survival. They relied heavily on livestock, especially sheep and goats, but maintaining these animals during the winter months required forward planning. Hay had to be harvested during the summer and stored for winter. Failure to store enough meant the risk of losing animals and consequently the food and warmth they provided.
Geez, one bad season and you're in an icy soup.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the cold. Scandinavia's rugged landscape made farming a challenge. Only a fraction of the land was arable. They relied on a technique called slash-and-burn agriculture. This involved cutting down parts of the forest and burning them to create fertile land for crops. But it was a short-term solution. After a few seasons, the soil lost its fertility and they had to move on.
Sounds exhausting. And here I complain about mowing the lawn.
It was a relentless cycle, but it made the Vikings resourceful and resilient. They became excellent shipbuilders and navigators, seeking out new lands for resources, trade, and conquest. Their challenging home environment played a role in pushing them to explore unknown territories.
So their backyard challenges made them the badasses of the seas. Respect.
Viking society was far more complex than just warriors with axes. Their social structure was layered and played a significant role in everyday life.
Sounds like high school all over again.
In some ways, yes. At the top, you had the kings and queens, rulers who held vast territories. Next were the jarls or earls. These were the nobility, the wealthy landowners and chieftains. They held a lot of power, and their favor was sought by many.
So basically the cool kids club.
Exactly. Below the jarls were the free men called carls. These were everyday Vikings, farmers, traders and craftspeople. They had rights, owned land, and could attend the Althing, a yearly gathering where important matters were discussed and decided.
Wait, so they had a yearly town meeting. Why does that sound like the beginning of every horror story?
It wasn't all doom and gloom. The Althing was a time of negotiation and sometimes celebration. But let's not forget the lowest rung, the thralls. These were the slaves in Viking society. They had little to no rights and were often captured during raids.
Ouch. So, if you're not part of the raiding party, you might end up being a parting gift.
Harsh but true. These slaves did the most menial and back-breaking tasks. Plus, ascending the social ladder was challenging. Politics was a game played by the powerful, and the Viking world was full of intrigue, alliances, and betrayals.
So basically, if you're not raiding, politicking or farming, you're busy watching your back. Lovely.
It wasn't all bleak. There were moments of festivity, community and kinship. But the power dynamics and the ever-present game of status and influence were integral parts of Viking society.
Sounds exhausting. I'll stick to the 21st century, thank you.
While Vikings are known for their combat prowess, their internal system of justice was equally relentless.
Oh, so no friendly neighborhood policeman to help you out?
Not quite. The Vikings didn't have a centralized government or policing force as we understand them today. Instead, they had a system called the Thing. a democratic assembly where free men could participate in discussions, solve disputes, and make decisions for the community.
Sounds kind of progressive, right?
On the surface, yes. But let's delve deeper. This assembly didn't just solve petty disputes over stolen goats. They dealt with severe crimes like murder and theft. And the punishments, they could be brutal.
I'm guessing no timeouts in a corner.
Far from it. For instance, if someone was found guilty of murder, the community would declare them outlawed. This meant that they had no protection under Viking law. Anyone could rob, harm, or even kill them without facing legal consequences.
So, a free-for-all on the poor guy?
Exactly. This sort of social banishment was a fate often worse than death. Because of the close-knit nature of Viking communities, being ostracized like this would mean losing your entire support system. No shelter, no food, and no protection from the elements or other Vikings.
Alright, so note to self, don't get on the bad side of Viking law.
And it wasn't just about punishments. Their system of holmgang, a duel to solve disputes, was another aspect. If two individuals had a disagreement they couldn't resolve, they might end up in a duel, which could sometimes result in death.
Oh, the good old days of settling disagreements with an axe. How civilized.
Indeed. So while the Viking judicial system had elements of democracy and representation, it was unforgiving, especially by modern standards. One wrong move, and it wasn't just the law you had to fear, but the collective wrath of the entire community. The Viking Age, which spans from 793 AD to 1066 AD, is best known for the seafaring raids carried out by the Norsemen. These weren't just occasional adventures. They were a deeply ingrained part of Viking culture.
Imagine having raider as a legit career option on your resume.
For many it was. Raiding provided wealth, status, and crucially, a chance at survival in their harsh homeland. With Scandinavia's limited agricultural potential, these expeditions were an alternative economic strategy. But while many Vikings were the raiders, they were also often on the receiving end of threats.
Wait, so you're saying Vikings got a taste of their own medicine?
Precisely, Dane. The Scandinavian lands from which the Vikings hailed were not one unified kingdom during the Viking Age. Instead, they were a patchwork of chieftain-led territories. This meant internal power struggles, battles for dominance, and yes, raids on neighboring Viking settlements.
Neighborly love, Viking style.
On top of these internal struggles, there were external threats. The Baltic and North Seas were bustling with activity. Other tribes and emerging kingdoms, such as the Slavs, Franks and Celts, would often engage in skirmishes or full-blown battles with Viking groups.
So, it's not just about raiding a monastery in England. It's also about defending your home from Olaf down the road, and or some Frankish knights from across the sea.
Spot on, Dane. Daily life wasn't just farming and trading, it was about survival. Ensuring your family and settlement were safe from threats both close to home and from afar. And let's not forget about the severe Nordic winters, which were adversaries in their own right, challenging the hardiest of Vikings with freezing temperatures, deep snow, and limited resources.
Okay, so add frequent flyer in battle miles, and winter is always coming to the list. Got it.
It wasn't just about wielding axes and sailing ships when it came to the Vikings. A significant part of their daily life revolved around their spiritual beliefs and the gods they revered.
So no Thor with a red cape and a fancy hammer?
Haha, not exactly, Dane. The Vikings had a pantheon of gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya. To ensure good favor, especially during important events or uncertain times, Vikings conducted elaborate rituals. And one of the most notable practices was the blot.
Blot? Sounds like something you'd say after a sneeze.
Not quite. Blot was a Norse pagan sacrifice to the gods, encompassing everything from offerings of food, artifacts, and, in some grand ceremonies, even animals or humans.
Whoa, humans?
Yes, human sacrifices, while not everyday occurrences, were notably performed during significant events or particularly trying times. The chosen individual, sometimes a slave or a prisoner, was seen as a messenger sent to the gods, carrying with them the community's wishes or pleas.
Talk about taking one for the team.
Indeed, the sacrificial ritual typically took place at sacred groves or near temples. The process involved ceremonial feasts, the chanting of incantations, and finally the act of sacrifice itself. Afterward, the body would be hung from a tree or placed in a ship, with the belief that it would journey to the gods. It was an act of reverence, fear, and hope, all rolled into one.
Sounds intense. I think I'll pass on that invitation to the Viking blood party.
Probably a wise choice, Dane. While the Viking era was undeniably rich in culture and history, it was also a time when beliefs, rituals, and practices were vastly different from what we're accustomed to today.
What? Did they have a Viking version of a funeral playlist?
Not exactly, Dane. They had ship burials. When a prominent Viking died, they were often laid to rest in their ship. This ship acted as a vessel to take them to the afterlife. But the truly shocking part, sometimes a wife or slave would volunteer to join the deceased on this journey.
Volunteer? You mean?
Yes, they would be sacrificed. There are records, especially the account of the Arab traveler Ibn Fadlan, detailing a ceremony he witnessed. When a chieftain died, a slave girl would volunteer to accompany him to the afterlife. She would be treated like royalty, being given intoxicating drinks and then taken to the deceased's ship. There she would be shared among the warriors, symbolizing her union with the chieftain and the community, and finally she'd be strangled and stabbed to be laid beside the dead Viking. The ship would then be set alight or buried beneath a mound.
That's intense. Talk about till death do us part.
It's essential to note that while this ritual sounds shocking to us, it was an honor for the Vikings. The chosen woman believed she'd be serving a vital role in the afterlife, ensuring the chieftain had everything he needed.
I mean, I'm all for loyalty, but that's taking things to a whole new level.
It indeed is, Dane. It's a testament to how deep and different Viking beliefs ran. While we may find it hard to understand, rituals like these were an integral part of their worldview. The Viking era. Harsh, challenging, but undeniably fascinating.
I think I'll stick to my heated blanket, thank you.
If this adventure piqued your curiosity, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling trips through time. Until our next journey.